couple of weeks ago, I was listening to an episode of This American Life on the radio, and the episode was titled, Who Do We Think We Are? And it's an excellent episode. If you haven't heard that one, I highly recommend that you go to thisamericanlife.org and check out that episode of the show, because it's really terrific. The theme of the show was people discovering things about themselves or their families or their communities that they never knew before, and how these things they discovered altered their perceptions of their communities or their families, and in some cases really threatened their senses of themselves, of who they were, because they found out things that had always been true, but that they never knew. The first segment of the show dealt with a conservative talk radio host here in the U.S. who is experiencing a little bit of an identity crisis since the Republican Party nominated or got to the point where it will presumably nominate Donald Trump as its presidential candidate this year. This conservative radio host is a man who has been active in the conservative movement for his entire adult life. He has supported Republican presidential candidates over and over and over again, and he was taken very much by surprise by the victory of Donald Trump in the Republican primaries. He just never imagined that the Republican Party he knew, the Republican Party he had been a part of, the conservative movement that he had been a part of all these years, would choose to nominate someone like Donald Trump. And despite the fact that the conservative movement and the Republican Party has been a tireless advocate for policies that have been in opposition to women and gays and trans folk and immigrants and non-Christians and non-white people for decades, this conservative talk show host is deeply troubled by the brazen misogyny and racism and xenophobia exhibited by Donald Trump, and as well as, of course, the more abrasive parts of his personality, the coarseness of him, the buffoonishness of him. And it made him have to ask himself, is this the party? Is this the movement that I have been a member of all along? Is this Republican Party, the one that just nominated Donald Trump, the party that I have been with all this time? And that's an experience that I can relate to. I went through something like that a few years ago relative to the atheist community, especially the atheist community online. When I first started identifying as an atheist, I came online and I found very prominent YouTubers on speaking on atheist topics, people who had very large audiences in the hundreds of thousands, and they would talk about how creationists were full of shit, and they would talk about how religion was bad and religion was foolish, and here's some good arguments for why evolution is true, and here's some good arguments for why creationism is false. And I really connected with that, and I really found a lot of that very useful. And I thought, yeah, this is a community built on reason and facts and science and empiricism, and we value objectivity, and we value examining our beliefs and examining the beliefs of others, and really honestly auditing what we think and what we say, and finding the truth no matter what it is, whether it's uncomfortable for us or not, and cutting through the cognitive bias that shapes so much of our thinking. And then a few years went by, and I paid more attention, to some atheist YouTubers, some of the most popular, prominent atheist YouTubers, and I started to notice that they were talking a little bit less about creationism and evolution and religion, or at least Christianity, and they were talking a lot more about feminism and how awful it was, and what a terrible person Rebecca Watson was, and what a terrible person Anita Sarkeesian was, and how Islam was uniquely awful as a religion. And I thought to myself, is this the community I was a part of? Is this the rational, unbiased, objective community where the most popular voices online are rabid anti-feminists, are brazen, proud sexists and racists and religious bigots? This is what the community is. This is what the community has always been. At least this is a part of what the community has always been. Because there is another part of the atheist community. There is a more socially conscious part, a more progressive part, a part that is more interested in doing activism and advocacy to attain equality, to overcome the obstacles that many people face due to various forms of marginalization. There are organizations like the American Humanist Association that is trying very hard to put front and center a social justice focus as a part of its humanist skeptical activism, something that I applaud vociferously, and I could not support any more than I do. I think the American Humanist Association is a great role model for other secular organizations in the way it has handled the social justice aspect of humanist advocacy, the way it has recently announced partnerships with a faction of black humanists and LGBTQ plus humanists and feminist humanists, and it has said this is an essential part of humanist activism, of skeptical activism, secular activism. This can't just be something that we pay lip service to and then leave off to the side. This has to be one of our priorities, because a humanist movement that does not center the least privileged people in our group, a humanist movement that ignores or silences or dismisses the concerns of people of color, of women, of LGBTQ folk, then that humanist movement is not truly a humanist movement. Because humanists must care about the equality and the fair treatment and justice for all people. And that means identifying and doing whatever we can to reform and overcome the systems of oppression and the social and political obstacles that stand in the way of people, that are placed in their way unfairly because of their gender identity, because of their sexuality, because of the color of their skin, because of their disability, because of any unjust reason. This has to be a major part of humanism. And the disappointing thing about it is the way you can see people who pride themselves on their skepticism and their objectivity and their willingness to try and recognize and cut through their biases, falling prey to those very biases when they reject social justice topics, when they demean people who are active in social justice movements by calling them SJWs or complaining about political correctness run amok or denigrating feminism or LGBTQ equality movements or racial justice movements like Black Lives Matter. It's an interesting demonstration of cognitive bias, because if you go into an atheist space online and point out that it's bullshit that there are currently no self-professing atheists serving in the United States Congress, not a single one, you'll get a lot of vigorous nods in agreement. When it's atheists who are marginalized, oh, we're right on top of that, boy. We're right on top of that. Oh, yeah, more atheists in Congress. Atheists on the Supreme Court, right? But if somebody points out that, say, most of the speakers at major atheist conferences are still cis-hetero white men, oh, that's not fair. Well, stop trying to... Why do you have to divide us? Why are you trying to divide us? You know, everything was great until these feminists showed up and started drawing lines around people. Why do you have to put people in categories like that? When a Christian mischaracterizes the average atheist and creates a straw man to attack, oh, we atheists are right on that. We atheists will correct every misconception, will counter every argument, will point out every fallacy. But if an atheist erects a Muslim straw man, and then another atheist points out that that's what is being done, that we are viewing Muslims and Islam with a double standard, that we are making sweeping conclusions about Islam and about Muslims that we do not make about Christians and that we would never accept being made about atheists. Oh, Islamophile. Don't you know? You call yourself a feminist? Don't you know how awful women are treated in the Muslim world? How can you defend Islam? I thought you were some kind of a progressive. What are you, a regressive leftist? If a prominent Christian personality or a prominent Muslim personality does something questionable, says something questionable, gives a really, really paternalistic, sexist sermon that goes viral, you know, we all watch the YouTube video and we cluck our tongues and we think, oh, the attitudes that these religious people, these fundamentalists have toward women is just barbaric. But when a prominent member of the atheist community says something blatantly misogynistic in a video or on Twitter, or I don't know, just to pull an example completely out of the air, just hypothetically retweets a video posted by one of the worst misogynists and harassers online right now, we can't make excuses for him fast enough. He didn't do anything wrong. He certainly didn't mean anything by it. Hey, he said all kinds of things in support of women in the past. He identifies as a feminist. When an atheist fucks up, we can't make excuses for him fast enough. But let a Christian or a Muslim or some other religious person fuck up or say something that we think is indicative of the awful attitudes of that religion or that culture toward women or people of color or gay people or whatever. Oh, we are on it. We do not let up. And we do not accept excuses for that. It's disappointing to find that double standard, and to find that double standard so rampant in a community that is filled with people who fancy themselves skeptics, and fancy themselves unbiased, and fancy themselves champions of freedom and champions of liberty, and are in many cases willing to go to work, willing to spend time and money and effort and labor promoting the cause of atheist fairness, of atheist justice, of atheist equality. We have no problem with concepts like oppression and marginalization and lack of social privilege when the underprivileged group being referenced is atheists. But when you take that same concept and you apply it to other underprivileged groups, other marginalized groups like women, like black folks or people of color in general, like trans folks, gay folks, that's just SJW bullshit. These things, race is just a social construct. It doesn't really mean anything. I bet you can't even name me a right that women don't have in the West that men have. See, we go there. Talk about atheist oppression. Oh, absolutely. On board 100%. Total bullshit. Let's do something about it. Talk about oppression of women. Talk about oppression of blacks. Talk about oppression of LGBTQ folk. Oh, well, that's just SJW horseshit. There's no place for that in atheism. Stop trying to poison atheism with that. And I'm not saying that an energetic commitment to social justice causes in general, or even any one particular social justice movement, ought to be necessary to be a member of an atheist community or a secular progressive community or movement. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that I think feminism and social justice activism in general needs to be a much more prominent part of atheist, secular, humanist activism in general. That doesn't mean that every single atheist or even every single atheist activist has to also be a Black Lives Matter activist and a feminist and a gay rights activist and a trans rights activist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that people who are interested in those things, people who are doing that work, people who are trying to push those priorities need to be welcome in the movement, and we should not be trying to push them away. One of the role models for me in the atheist movement, especially online, in my years as a part of this community, has been Aron Ra. And he was recently interviewed on the American Humanist Association's website. And Aron, during that interview, said something that I think every single atheist who has ever raised his or her voice in protest against feminism poisoning atheism or social justice poisoning atheism or all this PC mangina crap, every single person who has ever tweeted something like that or left a pissy comment like that on somebody's video or whined and complained about that sort of thing needs to hear what Aron Ra said in this interview. Quote, "The way I see it, if someone else wants to talk about gender equality, racial equality, transphobia, or whatever else, and you don't have an interest in that topic, you can't relate to it and therefore can't make a meaningful contribution, then you don't have to be in that conversation. You don't have to spread your ignorance and dismiss or minimize and otherwise disrespect other people's situations. You can post in some other thread or blog or what have you and talk about what you know. It makes no sense to me why there are substantial groups of people unified in their hatred of other people's problems that they can't pretend to understand themselves. Instead of posting yet another video whining about Anita Sarkeesian or hating on Rebecca Watson, stop paying attention to them and find something productive to do, something that might actually be useful to someone. Because I guarantee wherever you post this, you will see comments criticizing me for saying any of this. They'll give all the same wrong reasons they always do, and that will probably include the assertion that feminism isn't really about gender equality, that you and me and every other feminist somehow got that wrong, that we should all call ourselves something else, as if only those who hate feminism know what it is, and not anyone who identifies as such. This hypocritical, prejudiced, proudly bigoted, willfully ignorant, anti-feminist, anti-social justice portion of the atheist community is here. It is with us. It is extremely loud and extremely aggressive and toxic and difficult to ignore. And it will probably be with us for some time. But even though it is a part of us, it cannot speak for us. It cannot be who we are. If we want the atheist movement, the atheist community to mean anything and to be any good to anyone, especially the most marginalized, least empowered atheists in the world, it must not be that. And thanks to groups like the American Humanist Association, thanks to people like Aron Ra and Lalandra Ra and Sincere Karabo and Alex Jules and Sikavu Hutchison and Haina Dadaboy and Seth Andrews and Matt Dillahunty and Beth Presswood and Christy Winters and Foxy Jezebel and people, just an endless list of awesome people on YouTube and active very much within the atheist, secular, humanist community. Thanks to the hard work and dedication and intelligence and compassion and consciousness of people like that, I don't think we really have to worry about that. It's not fashionable for an atheist to say he has faith in something, but I have faith in that. I have faith that in the long run, that is not who we will be. Hey folks, I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please like it and share it and subscribe to this channel if you're not subbed already. And also, please consider helping me to make more videos like this one by supporting this channel through Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/Steve Shives to become a patron. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.